Evening from Europe, and welcome to the inaugural first edition of Bitcoin Treasuries World number one with KH/Khristina here as my guest. And the reason for this show is I'm already doing MSTR on Mondays, MetaPlanet Roundtable, which will go live tomorrow, 9 a.m. PST. Again, Smarter Web Wednesdays. But the reason for this is there's so many Bitcoin treasury companies out there now working hard to accumulate more Bitcoin for their shareholders. So I felt the need for a program that could broadly cover everything. But those three are still so interesting that they will have their own little shows here with me. Should I call you KH or Khristina?
Either. I answer to either now.
Okay. But Khristina, so good to see you, and welcome to the inaugural show here. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. This is exciting. Awesome. This is my first podcast. So as I said when you reached out to me yesterday, that I don't really love the whole public speaking thing, but I figured I'd rise to the occasion and contribute. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. And you said you'd be happy to contribute, and that's why I invited you on, because you are clearly already contributing a lot on X with different takes, opinions, and also a bit of research, which was in particular the reason that I wanted you to come on, so we could talk about that as I'm trying to widen my scope here in the companies to talk about. But why don't we start, before we get to that, why don't we start with your investing story. I can see in your X profile that you invested in stocks for a lot of years, and that has made you financially independent. So tell us your investing story.
Well, essentially, I was a TradFi girl, right? I graduated with a degree in finance. My first job out of school was at Vanguard on the trading desk. Shortly after that, I transitioned to take a job at Goldman Sachs in New York City, working in equity capital markets, followed by institutional sales. And then I ultimately ran US sales globally for another large international bank before leaving the business in 2019 at a fairly young retirement age. And in doing so, I wanted to make the money that I had kind of made and saved grow. And so I was very focused on investing and trading for myself to create income, initially a lot through options, and just finding the really kind of best investment ideas. And my investment story has really continued to evolve over the years. You come from traditional finance, and my portfolio looks much different today than it did in 2019 when I owned, the biggest and the Mag 7, and I was focused on, large cap and quality and growth. But now it's evolved into something that is not that.
Yeah. So what's the type of investments that you've been doing? Like, how is your portfolio? What did it look like when you started out, and what did it develop into? If you can take us through, there's potential phases there.
From where we are from, like I said previously, it was a very diverse, large portfolio where I probably didn't do enough research on each individual position that I had, but I would own NVIDIA, and I would own Google and Amazon and Apple and Microsoft and, Oracle and Dell, and, very tech heavy. I would say over the years, I've gotten a lot more concentrated, where I try to only own the best positions. And then more recently, probably starting in about 2021, 2022, maybe 2022, I stumbled across MicroStrategy, and I was trading it, really not investing in it, because the stock used to move, $100 a day, hundreds of dollars a week. And so I was getting a lot of alpha just from trading the stock or owning the stock and then selling options against it and creating fantastic income, which is what ultimately brought me to Bitcoin, because at the time, my best girlfriend got a job at MicroStrategy. And she said, "Oh, I just got this job at MicroStrategy." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I trade this stock every single day. It's fantastic. The swings are amazing." And she started there, and she started in marketing. And she's a marketing person. She's not a finance person. And she just kept asking me about Bitcoin. She said, I need to understand this. We have to read this book. I have to take this class. And so I was fascinated to learn more about the company because I was trading it, but also to help her because she worked there. And then I just started going down this Bitcoin rabbit hole, and became, fascinated with Bitcoin at that time, and have come kind of full circle now where most of my portfolio is Bitcoin. I do own MicroStrategy. I own some MicroStrategy leaps. I own a significant position right now in MetaPlanet, and just a couple of other smaller trade positions in some of the other Bitcoin treasury companies.
Nice. So when would you say that you said you became a Bitcoiner when you started? So do you own Bitcoin, spot Bitcoin now?
I do own spot Bitcoin. I think my first significant purchase of it was in 2022.
Okay. Well, that was a great time. That was the bear market. That's awesome.
But I just bought more this week. I bought it yesterday or the day before, whenever we were, at 100, dipped below 100. Like, I'm constantly trying to add.
Yeah. We're not really getting corrections and dips like we used to in Bitcoin. Bad news could send the stock down 40%. Now we are tethering on the brink of World War III, and it goes down 3%, and we are back above 100,000. We're at 102,600 right now. But that's interesting, Khristina, because from some of my maxi friends, I've been Bitcoin maxi for a bunch of years. I'm getting a significant pushback from the fact that I'm talking about a stunk on YouTube and X. But you're a good example of the Bitcoin treasuries like strategy actually can lead, or does lead, TradFi investing people into this overlap between Bitcoin and traditional finance stocks, and then you discover Bitcoin and start buying Bitcoin.
Correct. And it's interesting because in when I worked on Wall Street, and again, I left in 2019, there was absolutely no talk of Bitcoin. And when I was starting to trade MicroStrategy, and I was looking at the company more than trading it, when my girlfriend joined, and she no longer works there, just to say that, I couldn't make sense of it because I didn't have the history of Bitcoin to say, like, how is this company have such a large market cap and it is not in any of the indexes? Like, I was going to her every day saying, what is your company doing? Like, do they have investor relations? Are they meeting with investors? I was pulling up Bloomberg and looking at like their holders. I was like, no one holds this stock. Why does no one hold this stock? And it's because I didn't have the history of Bitcoin to know what had been going on in traditional banking with Bitcoin, with the companies, with the debanking, with all of it, that it just didn't make sense to me because I thought it was such an amazing company that had no institutional adoption or ownership at the time.
Yeah, very much so. And then we saw they've been added to some global indexes and stuff that I think have so level of volume, but the first one I think that really matter, you may know a lot more about this than I, but they got added to QQQ last year, and I think that major pump we saw in October and November, which was a lot of fun for me because I started buying strategy and some derivatives last year, was probably front running of the QQQ, which took effect in December. But now that we're getting close to a potential S&P 500 inclusion, which if the current price of Bitcoin lasts for the rest of the month of June, so another week, which I think it likely will do, there's also some other qualitative things they look at, whether to include it or not.
Right.
But if it is included, do you know how big the buy volume coming into strategies compared to QQQ? And obviously, they also
It'll be significantly more. I can't quantify it for you in terms of numbers right now, but what I can tell you is that a lot of the long only active institutional money managers benchmark themselves not against the QQQ, but against the S&P 500. So when they're telling their clients, how is my performance? It's relative to the S&P 500 in a majority of the cases. And so what will happen is if it is included in the S&P 500, every fund manager has to make a decision as to whether or not they are just going to market weight it, overweight, or underweight it. And so you're going to have all of these funds that use that as their performance benchmark doing the work to determine how they're sizing it. And I think that is going to be another just big catalyst, not only for MicroStrategy, but for the overall space as people in the institutional world are really forced to take a look at, Bitcoin as an equity investment.
Yeah, it moves, or it has moved, maybe not so much lately, where some people is calling it a bit of a stable coin, but it has moved a lot. Last year, it had two major blow off tops. So it's definitely something that a money manager that needs to compare themselves to S&P 500, they can't ignore it. They have to make that decision.
Correct.
Or they can end their career. And I think it's probably better that they own some strategy. Actually, now that we're talking about it, I personally consider, and none of what we're talking about is financial advice, of course. This is just financial entertainment and self-education. We're learning from each other. And then maybe it's useful for others out there, but it's definitely not advice to anyone. When I look at strategy now and the premium we're paying to the Bitcoin they're holding, it's quite low. I would say strategy is quite de-risked, and potentially it feels like it's at that point where it's gotten really boring and people are selling it to buy the next shiny rocket, be it MetaPlanet, which we both own, or SWC, or something else. But maybe those are the times that are best to buy. It's almost like, I would say, at this point with an MNAV of 1.9, there's hardly any downside in this stock. They still do have some leverage debt on the balance sheet. So when the price of Bitcoin starts moving up, which it will, a matter of time, that should benefit strategy, and we can get some volatility and upside movement on the stock again. So
I agree. I think sentiment feels pretty low, which is typically an opportunistic time to get involved. But I do think we are going to have to see, just based on how the stock has been acting, I think we are going to have to see, a much bigger move higher in Bitcoin for it to kind of start working again.
Yeah, if we look at the today's purchase announcement, I know there's a lot of people that are disappointed that they only bought a quarter of what MetaPlanet did. They bought 246 Bitcoin, and MetaPlanet bought more than 1,100 without ATMing on the common stock. But nevertheless, we want to see more strategy holders. And just disclaimer, both Khristina and I are exposed to both of those stocks.
Yep.
And I'm holding on to it for the sake of, I think S&P, and I also think that the price of Bitcoin is due to go a lot higher this year. What's your thoughts on that? So I come at strategy from a Bitcoiner's background. That's how I knew of strategy in 2020. We thought it was exciting, but so I have been all about the 4-year halving cycle. I don't know how much you've heard of that or believe it, or if you're looking at M2 Global Money Supply, or what you look at.
Of course. Yep. No, I've come full circle and look at everything and follow everything and continue to try to educate myself. I would love to hear your thoughts on the 4-year halving cycle. I personally, although I haven't lived through, many cycles before, feel like we're at this different time with the institutional adoption and the introduction of the ETFs. And all of these companies really on a daily basis now adding Bitcoin to Treasury. You know, we have Bitcoin Treasury companies that are creating flywheels to do this. We also have operating companies adding Bitcoin to their Treasury. And I just think that this is a trend, really a mega trend that is only going to pick up speed. And whether or not it's companies raising money to buy Bitcoin or just larger companies that are moving long-term working capital that is just sitting there on their balance sheet out of fiat into Bitcoin because they understand the depreciation of fiat and the ability to actually generate returns with Bitcoin. I think this trend is just going to continue to evolve, you know, sooner rather than later, as we're seeing now.
Yeah, I think it's probably equally as exciting to me as the leverage Bitcoin equity space itself. And why do I find that exciting? Well, because I only held Bitcoin for the whole time I was exposed to Bitcoin, because there was no way you could outperform Bitcoin until Strategy showed it could be done and how it could be done in a way, and explained it so well in the Q3 earnings announcement last year, which is a historic epic. I was one of 4,000 people watching that live. I don't know if
I was watching it live, and that was actually when I got on to Twitter. So my partner, and keep in mind that I was, you know, have been investing in stocks just in my own vacuum, not on Twitter since 2019. And I was on the Strategy earnings call, and I was making notes and talking about it. And after, you know, a week of continuing to talk about the stock, he said, get off of that freaking Instagram and TikTok and get on Twitter. You have to get on this thing. And so I put a post together, and I made my first post about MicroStrategy and that October 2024 earnings call. And it went a tiny bit viral. Someone was like, you know, how do you only have 1 like and like 3 followers? And I said, well, this is my first post. And it kind of just like evolved from there. But that earnings call is kind of what prompted everything for me.
Right. Nice. Well, he did a good call to tell you to get on X, and the rest of us are enjoying. There's really a network effect of brainstorming and sharing thoughts and idea and analysis on X, and it's really strong now, I would say. So it was really last year that like I had put in family members into Strategy since 21 because of age, either being low or high, to the extent where I was like, yeah, we're not going to do private keys in your specific case. You're, you know, too much of a baby, or not not young enough to, like, whatever. It sounds bad if let me just get to the point. So for those people, I thought Strategy is the way to go. It's better to have this with a positive compound interest than an ETF that has a negative compound interest. Now, we didn't have ETFs back then. We had GBTC, which traded either up or down, like with big premiums compared to the net asset value inside of them. So I thought Strategy is good because at least every now and again they add some Bitcoin, so it's positive compound interest. And little did I know that, especially last year, they really started using all those tools and very significantly outperformed Bitcoin, which is probably the reason it was at least same timing that a lot of my Maxi friends started, not a lot, but some start pushing back against it. Like now it was not okay anymore, which I think is funny. It's part of the reason why I started the MSTR on Monday show, which was the first one I did.
Well, you're braver than I am for putting family into stocks. That's for sure. I no longer recommend investments for friends or family other than Bitcoin. And I think that, you know, my father, actually, happy birthday, Dad, if you ever watch this. His birthday is today. He's 81 years old, and, you know, Greek patriarch of the family, very, very, very risk averse conservative investor. likes his 5% CDs, rolls them, has really, unfortunately, never, invested much in the stock market. And I was just, constantly telling him about Bitcoin, 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 Bitcoin. And I finally got him to buy the IBIT ETF, which was a whole other thing, because at the time when he called his brokerage firm last year, they had to read him this whole disclaimer of like the risks and, Bitcoin, be worried. But he was like, even though I still don't really understand it, what I do understand is your conviction. So I'm investing because of your conviction. So now my dad is a proud, at least, Bitcoin owner through an ETF.
Nice. Well, that's a good start. It's beats S&P 500 with a little bit of a time frame there. But it was last year really this started happening, and if you go back and look at 24, the ballpark numbers are that Bitcoin went up 2.5x, while strategy went up 6.5x, and that's where that combined with that Q3 epic earnings call clearly has woken up people across the globe, and now we're seeing leveraged Bitcoin equities come out of the woodwork from everywhere, and which is the reason that we're sitting here today to discuss. So I was thinking, but if I should answer your question about the cycle, let me do that first. So I would say till this date, the Bitcoin cycle is intact. The way the price is moving up until this very day, your dad's birthday, happy birthday, Dad. Then the cycle is still intact. However, as you were saying, I always said, the final boss is when the U.S. government, the most powerful, I don't know if you can say richest organization anymore because it's actually close to bankrupt, but at least they have a powerful money printer of the global reserve currency still. Like once they start buying, that's kind of like the final boss, and then Bitcoin goes to the moon. So, but they haven't started buying yet. So let's see what happens. It's really hard to tell, I must say. There's good arguments on both sides, but as you said, I mean, there is a strategic Bitcoin reserve in the most powerful, richest nation in the earth on Earth, and they're looking at ways to budget neutral buy Bitcoin. So that's a big thing, but let's see when it actually starts happening. It's really hard to tell.
It's impossible to tell. But you do have states like Texas, and other governments, moving forward with Bitcoin before the federal government.
Yeah. By the way, you can tell your partner that there's 422 live viewers. So you're a success here, Khristina. And I'm sure after you've done this and more people are exposed to your ideas and analysis, I'm sure you're going to be invited on bunch of shows now. So this is your new life.
I'll twist my arm like you did. I'll probably say no first and then agree.
Just don't forget where your TV career started. Okay. Anyway, so
yeah, the tracker that I initially started was really for myself because I was trying to understand. I wanted a simple cheat sheet of tickers. So where can I buy this? Is there a US OTC? What's the local ticker if it's a foreign company, and does it trade on any other exchanges? And I also wanted to just have a sense of like where the company and where the exposure was coming from, because I think for MetaPlanet, and why I have, one of the reasons I have such high conviction and having such a big position in that particular stock is because of the, Japan component, which is unique to them. And so being able to identify other situations that offer unique geographic exposure was one of the intents behind kind of making this cheat sheet for myself. Now it continues to kind of expand because, people respond, add this company, add this company, add this company. And so I think it's getting probably too broad for my initial intent in terms of the use case. And I've had other people reach out that want to expand on it and make it better and make it, shareable in Google Sheets and adding like amazing columns based on, who's backing it, who's involved. And so I think we're going to see some iterations of this, in the very short term, with other people just taking the initial template and running with it and making better, which I'm fully happy for someone to do. But that's why I created it to begin with. I was coming at it from an investor trader perspective, wanting kind of a quick reference of the tickers across the various exchanges to the extent that I wanted to put a trade on.
Right. And anything here that you found interesting and started buying? If so, why?
So outside of my initial position in MicroStrategy shares and Leaps, which I still own and will continue to own, MetaPlanet, I've put a significant portion of my overall portfolio in, and I would say that's the one that I own. Aside from that, anything else that I have bought or sold or still own is pretty insignificant, and I'm approaching it more as a trade. And the reason for that is it's very hard for me to really size a position unless I have done a lot of work and have a lot of conviction. And I just don't have the capacity to do as much work to develop conviction in other names. I'm not an analyst by background. I'm not a quant. So I do leverage other people's work when deciding whether or not to buy or sell a stock. I might have the idea to begin with, but I do leverage other people's work to decide whether or not it's worth adding more money. Climb the ladder. I mean, he is the absolute best. And if it weren't for his generosity and sharing his data, his analytics, his thought process, I probably wouldn't have gotten as much conviction as I do in the particular stock. Plus, I had the opportunity to meet and spend time with the management team out in Las Vegas, which was also, hugely helpful, because I think at the end of the day, really what's going to help define the winners and the losers in this space is the management, the strategy and their execution. And it's going to come down to that.
And since you're bringing it up, just absolutely flawless execution from MetaPlanet. As much as we can agree that Bitcoin is the hurdle rate for all investment decisions, I would say MetaPlanet to me now is the hurdle rate for any leveraged Bitcoin equity investment. And if we look at, let me bring up, I'm just going to refresh this page. I look at strategytracker.com. By the way, Khristina, so if people want to see the list that I had on the screen before, they can find that on your profile. Yes. on X. And your profile on X, if we just open this up again, if people can see.
MC_Khristina. Khristina is spelled with a KH, which always throws people off. And that's why my name on X is KH.
Yes. So on X, it's at MC_Khristina with KH. Gotcha. So well, I'm going to just stop screen sharing that, and then I'll start screen share of this other one that I want to talk about, that I spoke about, the strategy tracker, right here. So what we're seeing here is they usually relatively updated, and I do believe that today's purchase announcements from all three are included. I'm not sure, is strategy, did they move on from 582? Well, I mean, anyways, it wasn't a lot of movement, I guess. I know MetaPlanet and the blockchain group both are updated on this one. So if we have a look at MetaPlanet in the middle, the reason why, and again, just full props to climb that ladder, which is the goat of MetaPlanet analysis. And if it wasn't for his work that started in April, half of X wouldn't be on, or the LBE interested part of X wouldn't be on MetaPlanet now, and we are that thanks to climb that ladder, because they had high growth still, but the MNAV dropped to around 2.5 in April, and it, after sliding for months, it became a screaming buy. But if we take a look at how they're doing right now, we're almost done with Q2. And we see that if we take from the fourth number from the bottom is the Bitcoin yield quarter to date. They have done 108% Bitcoin yield in less than 3 months, which means that each stock owns 108% almost more Bitcoin. And this is the reason that people buy LBs in the first place, because they're able to accumulate more Bitcoin per stock, and that's how they can outperform Bitcoin in the price movement. Now, the NAV premium for MetaPlanet, so the premium that we're paying for the net asset values, is the fourth number from the top. It's around 7.5. So that's why, to me, it's just they're knocking it out of the ballpark, and that is the LBE that you do want to own, in my opinion, not financial advice. If we look at the blockchain group, they have done 64% quarter to date, which is wildly positive, but still lagging MetaPlanet quite a bit. Yet, if we go up and take the fourth number from the top of the NAV premium at 10.71, you're actually paying more per for the Bitcoin on the balance sheet at blockchain group. What's your thoughts on that, Khristina?
If you look at this page in isolation, the one stock to own is MetaPlanet, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. It sounded like you were going to give me some good reasons for why that is a very shallow analysis.
No, I mean, it's one of the reasons I own it is really the clean exponential growth, right?
Yeah,
and they, the management's, communication of their strategy in terms of only selling on up days. Before there was a pivot from strategy away from the convertible market, Simon was very vocal that he wasn't quite sure that converts made sense for them, because there wasn't necessarily an alignment between convert investors and companies. They would get the convert and then they would, short the stock to hedge the convert. And so he was skeptical on using that approach in terms of capital raising. And I think, that's why they have the growth that they have and why they have the NAV premium that they have. I think the proof is in the numbers.
Absolutely. And if we just compare that to strategy, then their yield has sadly dropped quite low. BTC yield quarter to date, almost 3 months, is compared to the others quite a bit lower at 5.56%. So 5.5% compared to MetaPlanet's 100 and almost 8%. However, when you look at the premium you're paying for strategy, it's also only 1.93 on diluted shares, which is a very small premium. So I would say that strategy has become quite the value play. There's not really outgrowth of Bitcoin right now, but as we spoke about early on the flip side, we could likely 7-8 days from now be in a situation where, like, right, it looks like they're going in an S&P 500. A lot of buy volume is coming. That's going to increase their credit rating, which increases the attractiveness of their 3 preferred stocks, Strive, Strike, and Stride. Mm-hmm. They themselves also will get credit rated sooner or later and will be worth easy 50% more than they are right now, which means that they're raising funds at 1/3 of the cost of the interest payment compared to what they're raising. So if they can really get volume on the ATM on those 3, things can change. And I could see a scenario where if S&P 500 works out, they might be able to raise 10 billion a week and buy ballpark, 10,000 Bitcoin a week. It's Bitcoin's price, of course, is going to go up, but I mean, ballpark numbers that could happen. Right now, it's very compressed, but also to a point where I think I'd love to hear your opinion on that. So I'm talking with my other LPE degen friends quite a bit, and one of the things we're talking about is, well, let's say that the fiat currency world is dead and over, and all we have is Bitcoin, and stocks will be priced in Bitcoin. These stocks will all be priced based on two things. I've kept saying that for a long time since the first show I did. The Bitcoin they have on the balance sheet and some kind of value assigned to the income, the revenue, the profit they can generate from that Bitcoin they have on the balance sheet when they start acting like a bank or whatever. And where we're at right now, me and my LBE DJ friends, is it's probably not unlikely to have a pricing of these stocks at twice of what they have on the balance sheet, because they can generate income with that. If that is the case, that means there will be no end game MNAV compression for MSTR. So it's like you're buying it at the final price, and any growth there is on Bitcoin on the balance sheet is pushing the stock up without eventually the MNAV having to compress from 12 or 8 down to 2. What's your thoughts on that?
No, I do think we're in a situation where MicroStrategy's MNAV has room for expansion versus necessarily thinking that MetaPlanet's MNAV is going to greatly compress. I think they're both, like you said, being priced very differently. Like MicroStrategy right now is being priced as a much slower growing company, and hence the lower MNAV, whereas MetaPlanet is, getting a premium because of the exponential growth. And it's almost like, in the traditional finance world, you're looking at a value stock versus a growth stock right now. MicroStrategy, I think, will have MNAV expansion the more that Saylor continues to lay off the ATM. In addition, S&P 500 potential catalyst. I think the jury is, I know a lot of people think it is a done deal and happening. I think the jury is out. It doesn't necessarily happen as quickly in the first time every time. We've seen companies like Robinhood be up for inclusion, 2 quarters in a row now, and they have not been added. And so there are other factors that, are part of the process when the S&P makes these decisions. So I don't think just because Bitcoin closes at a certain price, this next quarter, that people can say, oh, it's absolutely going to get added. Like, I just think that's, it could, but it's naive to think it's a done deal. What else was I going to say on MicroStrategy? Room for MNAV expansion, especially with the price of Bitcoin, right? Like, once Bitcoin does start to make a much bigger move higher, I think we'll see, MicroStrategy as a stock work better, and the valuation expansion that we're kind of looking for.
Totally agree. Wait, I've just thrown off course here by. Anyways, a notification that my phone is on silent, but there's an app that
and Bitcoin right now, I mean, is holding in quite solidly. I mean, we're on the brink of there's global war is taking place right now, and Bitcoin is pretty solid.
Very solid. No, it's such a good point.
But as a Bitcoiner, if you understand Bitcoin, you would expect it to be solid. But in years past, that hasn't always been the way it's traded.
Absolutely. Wait, what else is there? Oh, I do want to say, so a lot of people, Khristina, they put, and you don't have to, you can put obviously KH, whatever you want, but right here, what they do is they put their handle, so it's easy for people watching to find them, but I'll make it easy, so that as everyone watching can hear, it would be a good idea. You don't have to change. I'm not even sure if you can change it while we're out. You probably can. I'm not sure how, but I have made a link now in the show notes. So on YouTube, people are watching this both live from on X and on YouTube. But if on YouTube, in the show notes, there is a link to a profile. There is a link to everyone that has been on one of my Bitcoin Treasury company related shows since I started this. I think it was early October last year. And on my, if you're watching on X, then from my profile, you can click over to the YouTube channel. There you can find the shows, and you can find Khristina's X profile and give her a follow. Just wanted to point that out. So you say right now you may have some small positions in some of these many companies popping out of the woodwork.
I've taken trades. I actually I bought some of them quite well. I actually took a lot of money off the table on Friday. I felt like I was collecting too many positions, and I wasn't necessarily in the weeds on the positions that I had collected. So, I bought Cantor Equity Partners very well at 1650. Decided to just let that one go on Friday. I had bought the Smarter Web Company around $1.70. I had made several 100% in a matter of weeks. And again, just decided to take the money off the table and not be greedy. I still have positions on right now in H100. And, I still have a position on in blockchain, but I'm going to have to kind of reevaluate that after our conversation today.
The blockchain group?
Because at the end of the day, it's hard to own anything but MetaPlanet. Like, we can all get caught up in the FOMO and want to buy the next thing that we think is going to, have, parabolic performance. But I think MetaPlanet is the one to kind of really just like own in size and invest in, for me personally. Everyone else has to. I love, at some point Klein said, don't take my conviction, find your own. And I think that's so true. Like, I don't lose sleep at night ever, based on the way I size my portfolio, because I size it based on my own conviction. I don't rely on anyone to tell me when to get in a trade or when to get out of a trade. You really have to be comfortable with the money you're putting to work, so that you can sleep at night.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And so the reason I pointed this out was, so I was doing a lot of thinking over last week and the weekend when I was at BTC Prague. I heard some great talks with Adam Back and Alex from Blockchain Group and Saylor, Richard Byworth, and thank you for connecting me with him. He's going to come on my channel as well.
Great.
And what it kind of dawned on me while I was in Prague is, when you have companies, we spoke about this in the green room before, but want to share it with everyone. When you have companies that have at least one full quarter behind it, I think it's fair to look at, well, what is the quarter to date BTC yield, right? And both MetaPlanet and Blockchain Group started last year. Granted, Blockchain Group didn't start until December, but they had all of Q1, and now they've had almost a full Q2. They're mature, unlike SWC, which I do not hold to the same standard in terms of what I'm willing to pay in MNAV. I'm willing to pay more because they're going vertical, and then I'll have to see and at some stage make a decision. But both SWC and Blockchain Group, when I bought them, I said these are tiny bags. I haven't done fully the work. I've got FOMO, and I think there might be something here. So I bought in. So that was my thinking when I was in Prague, that, well, both Blockchain Group and MetaPlanet are now mature. Even though MetaPlanet has a longer time, that usually means when we look at, well, strategy, that there's a decline in the return. But again, looking at the numbers, they're both mature. That's the two companies on the right, MetaPlanet in the middle and Blockchain Group on the right. Then Blockchain Group, quarter to date, has generated 64%, but MetaPlanet has delivered 108%, and it's cheaper on the net asset value. So that's why I decided, because I felt also my thinking. I think that was especially Saturday. I was sitting next to a guy, and we're talking about maybe it's getting a little bit frothy, and there's all these companies coming now. So where do you draw the line, and are you just going to let everything ride forever, or do you need to at some stage? So my thinking was, okay, I'm totally against using margin on my account, because using margin, you need one bad day, you need some world event happening that you cannot foresee, and you lose everything. You blow your account up. I've seen it happen to a friend during COVID that lost his big stack. I don't know how big, but I'm pretty sure it was big stack of Bitcoin on BlockFi, because the price of Bitcoin dropped 50% in 8 hours. I remember watching it on TradingView. That was insane. Like, losing 50% in 8 hours is pretty wild. That was COVID, and look what's happening now. Hardly anything, and we're at the brink of world war, right? But where was it going?
I mean, the market can, Bitcoin stocks, the overall stock market, it can correct. And based on where we are in terms of the maturity of like just the systems, things and leverage and options and all of these other algorithms and factors that go into how things trade, when things correct now, they correct very quickly. And we saw what happened to the overall stock market at the beginning of like the Trump tariff noise, and how significantly the market corrected in a very short amount of time. And so people just need to be aware, like with everything, how you're managing your risk, what your exit strategy is, and just be mindful, because yeah, it can change very quickly.
Absolutely. And so that was my thinking was, well, I have these tiny bags. I did buy them on margin, so I don't want to have that margin riding, because I don't want to blow my account. And then when I was sitting and talking to this guy, I was thinking, yeah, maybe I should sell both of these now. I was looking at SWC and Blockchain Group, right? But then my thinking was, well, there's one that I clearly kind of should get out on now, and that's the numbers that I shared now, right? It's probably time to sell Blockchain Group. For me, it could be right to hold for others, and maybe they're going to knock it out of the ballpark. There's new initiatives on the way, and their yield might take off next quarter. I mean, it's still very nice in this quarter. It's just that MetaPlanet is just in another league. They're on their own planet, basically. But so I closed that one, did 86.6% or something, had it for 1 month. Fine, paying off on the margin. So what I've done instead, just want to share that with you. So I'm still using, but it's not very much. I'm still using some of the margin on SWC, but it's a small position, and I think the performance happening there right now, I do want to hang on to it a bit more and see where Andrew can take it. By the way, anyone interested, then I did have Andrew on this channel last Wednesday, where I did the inaugural Smarter Web Wednesdays, which was suggested by as a joke by IQ80 Genius. He's an SWC shareholder and active community member. And when I tweeted out on Tuesday that I got a tiny bag of SWC, he said, "Oh, then you should totally do Smarter Web Wednesdays, because I do MSGR Mondays, etc." So now I'm not stuck, but I'm stuck with that. Well, I'm going to continue to do that, and I'm not selling that, not yet, because I think what Andrew Webley is doing there, and I think it was a great show, because it was mainly him talking. So if anyone hasn't seen that, you can find it on my YouTube channel. But they have such rapid growth right now that they have a real shot at becoming interesting on a global level, I would say. So want to see how that plays out. There's very little money I have at play. What I actually wanted to get to, Khristina, and tell you is that Dan Hillary inspired me to
Love Dan.
Yeah, right. Amazing guy. So shout out to you, Dan. And if you're not watching, which you're probably not, someone could cut that and send it to you. as someone who knows how to do that technically. But so inspired by Dan talking about Strike as something you can hold on margin because it's really limited downside, and it's very limited downside of Strike. It's a fixed income product,
Yes.
but because 10 of those can convert into one MSTR, it kind of means that today around 36-7%, maybe 40, arguing about what the premium would be. Let's just make it round numbers. Say 40% of it really is MSTR exposure. So what I did instead was kind of maxed out as much strike buying on margin that I could, because it's almost balancing. The cost of the margin is almost balancing what I'm getting in dividend from him, and it pays once a quarter, by the way. So if anyone is interested, I think it's just 10 days from now, 2nd of July, that they pay that 2%. So that's $2 per stock that you get into your account. So I maxed that out now, and if it works out with me being right about MSTR being really cheap right now and potential S&P 500 inclusion, if not this time, probably next time, I think it could be good to own as much of that as possible. But I wouldn't buy it if it wasn't on margin. If it's straight up, I have cash I want to allocate, MetaPlanet would be the way to put the place to put it. I think we agree on that.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. All right. So let me just see in the chat here if there's something. Well, while I just read the chat and see if there's something, any questions or anything, let me just say that again, obviously, none of this, what we're doing here, is financial advice. We're just like, with two people sitting with a cap on the internet and talking about stocks, you don't want to take advice from them. You just smile, laugh, and consider it entertainment and potential education. But if you like the financial entertainment, please hit like and subscribe and share if you know anyone who could benefit from it. And see, now since I was talking the whole time, I didn't read the chat at all by saying that. So let me just, it bears, I'm just going to throw this up and read it, and then we'll see. It bears highlighting how well MetaPlanet has been managing their MNAV, keeping it in a sustainable yield optimizing range, in particular, not over milking as other have are. I think, yeah. What's your thoughts there?
I agree. I mean, it's just, reiterating what we know about MetaPlanet's management team and how they're executing their strategy. They're doing it in a very shareholder-friendly way.
And let me just put this out there. June 23rd, the way things are going right now, MetaPlanet, in my opinion, and has a shot at overtaking strategy. I'm sorry, but that I know they only have 11,000. Strategy has, what is it? Almost 600, almost 700,000. Wait, I got to go back and look at that, at the numbers they have. Well, they have almost 600,000. So I know it's very, very far off, but that's the thing about compound interest. It's extremely powerful and not to be ignored. But even if they don't do that, I would say, I, at this point, expect MetaPlanet to reach 500,000 Bitcoin within the next 5 to max 10 years, if not sooner. I think that's very much on the table. And let me once again just bring this one up, Khristina. All right, let me just move that because where was I? All right. So, and this is something I will be talking more about in the future as well, because I think it's so important. If you look at how many Bitcoin MetaPlanet has, 11,111, and the premium is 7.5. So right now, actually, MetaPlanet is priced at around 80,000 Bitcoin. That's their market cap. Forget dollars. Dollars is a failing unit of account. Bitcoin is the ultimate unit of account. So if the price of the company is 80,000, I'm convinced they'll get to at least 420. That's 2% of the total supply. Well, then there's ample growth there, as well as the price of Bitcoin is going to go from 100,000 to 50 million. So I think it'll be a fun thing to own.
Yeah, if I'm not misquoting their numbers, their new 555 plan has them at a 210,000 Bitcoin target. And it's been made very clear that they hope to over deliver, and they've set very achievable targets. So, there are some wild cards. We don't necessarily know what, Jack Mallers at Cantor Equity Partners will do when that merger's done and they're starting with like a very big stack. But I feel pretty confident that MetaPlanet will no doubt, be in the number 2 spot.
Yeah, as the final. Absolutely. Like, speaking of Capital 21, I personally, I don't own it. I don't know when the flywheel can start cranking. Why would I pay a premium there without knowing? Because when that happens, because at MetaPlanet, they double the amount of Bitcoin per share in 3 months.
Right.
So standing still hurts. It's things are going fast right now, especially at MetaPlanet, and that really is. MetaPlanet is the go. Let me just also bring that one up on the screen and read it. Every dollar, for those that may be listening only, every dollar not in MetaPlanet has me thinking, this is from Elsie, it should be, with no upper limit yet, whereas all other non-MSTR BTC TCs have me worried. MNAV compression, sustainability, etc. Yeah, it really is the hurdle rate in the LBE space, and this is the space of the best performing investments in the world right now, period. Like, MetaPlanet is the GOAT-ish. Right.
And Simon, is a former Goldman Sachs derivatives trader. He is a very smart, financially savvy guy. That's the type of person, that's the type of background that you want for someone to execute a strategy like this. I think it's going to be much more difficult for some of the more, zombie companies who have had like a legacy operating company that's been failing with a CEO who's been running that business to then, pivot and do some of the very kind of creative things that Simon and Dylan are doing to execute their plan.
Yeah, it really shows that background, and it's both of them, right? Like, Dylan is a financial wonder kid. They may not be, but they're I was going to say rocket science test, but they have
They're the dream team.
They're a dream team, and they're killing it. And a dollar outside of MetaPlanet at this point, you kind of got to justify it, right?
Right.
I like that. I saw, actually, so our BBTC 3000 posted this. Let me read it up, because I saw you, Khristina, posting it earlier about Pomp's company. What do you make of Anthony Pompliano's CCCMs, which stands for Columbus Circle Capital Corp, announcement this AM $1 billion raise to buy Bitcoin? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I posted the headline early. I can't say that I looked into the details of the actual structure and what it's going to look like, but great, more demand for Bitcoin.
Yeah, and exactly as you just said there, that's kind of why we did this. So I wanted to have you on and talk about that giant list of all these tickers. Right, here's another one, and it takes time to evaluate. But at this point, you gotta have something pretty incredible if you want to allocate away from MetaPlanet.
Absolutely. And I think also too, like, we all have to keep in mind as, predominantly retail investors, I think that when people put, and this is not specific to Columbus Circle at all, but when people, and I'm going to exclude this one, but when people put their names and attach it and they're backing it, they're usually backing it for a reason, in the sense that they want to align themselves with the management team, or they do like the strategy. But at the same time, these people were probably on like an early round of a deal where they got stock at $1, and now, the stock's at $10. And so, there's a financial incentive for, legacy Bitcoiners in this space to lend their name, and it's because it makes financial sense to do so. And so I would just, everyone just needs to be mindful of that. Like, are they out there buying the stock at the price I'm buying at it today? Or were they given stock much earlier at a much lower price? And I just think it's something that people should be mindful of.
No, it's a great point. Absolutely great point. We've been going for 1 hour now, Khristina, and I want to be respectful of your time as well. But I will say, it's been super good having you on, and I think this is going to be the first of hundreds of appearances of you. Was it not totally okay?
It was okay. Thank you. You made it very casual and easy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I
even said earlier today to my partner, I was like, I can't believe I agreed to do this. I have so much anxiety. Like, what did I do? But no, it was great. It was fun.
Good. I'm glad you liked it. And I really enjoyed having your wealth of knowledge on as well. So going forward, when I decide, all right, I'm going to do a show about this at this time, and I know I'll go live with something, I'll let you know. And then just like and then if you're free and available, please do jump on, because it was great having you on. You have a wealth of knowledge and a different perspective, but a very high caliber and full of signal perspective. So that was awesome. Okay, let me grab, see what else there's in the chat before they go. Let's just grab this one from Elsie. His comment is, Simon and Dylan seem like they were put on this planet, specifically for this, and give the MIT engineers a run for their money. Yeah, and they're doing great. And let's not forget, of course, we wouldn't even be here, and they wouldn't be here if Saylor and Strategy haven't done what they did. And no companies go through success in a straight line. Saylor already tried having a .com run up, and then he waited for 20 years for things to get exciting again. And I think very much so that since he's the only one who has 3 very attractive preferred stocks targeting the $300 trillion global fixed income market, just a matter of time before the money really starts flowing in those pipes, and they go into Bitcoin, and Strategy is going to sit there and profit from it, and so will the Strategy shareholders. So just a reminder again, right now the MNAV for them is 1.93 or something, as we looked at, and it's I think yeah, nothing is happening right now clearly with 246 Bitcoin for a weekly purchase, but S&P 500 and everything, the global fixed income, things can pretty much only go up, I think. So Khristina, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, the next pitch I give my dad is going to be onto one of these preferreds.
Yeah,
he likes the income and the kind of fixed income component. There is a small chance that I can convince him.
So I actually made a show recently.
Oh, fantastic!
That is not targeted your dad, but I'm going to just find it here anyway. But if I hold it up, I don't know if you can see.
Yep.
Right. No, hang on. That was. So, what does it say? How to get grandma's
22. Yep.
Yeah.
How to get Bitcoin exposure into grandma's account.
Yeah.
With
So
STRK.
That's MSTR Mondays, episode 22, and that's simply what Strike can do. There's very limited downside. You get a yield, which is really
a very good yield.
A very good yield. I'm sure the money market you're talking about, your dad was doing. What do you get, like 5.5%?
Maybe 5%. Yeah.
So this is almost 8%. And 40% of the stock really is MSTR because of the perpetual call option with no expiry. And let's not forget that when Bitcoin runs, MSTR runs faster. So
Right.
even though it's only 40% that has Bitcoin upside exposure, that 40%, given long enough time, actually will outperform Bitcoin itself, likely. So yeah, that's the key. So you should show him that, and also absolutely you should share this show so your dad can see that you rocked it today.
Thank you.
And happy birthday to him. All right. Anything else you want to share, Khristina, before we go offline? Or
I think we're good.
awesome. I will be inviting you back on the next shows. I can. Sorry.
I said I look forward to it.
Excellent. If you have time, then tomorrow noon, I'm doing MetaPlanet Roundtable episode 4. Climb will be on. He's confirmed.
I won't have anything to contribute. You have Climb. That's all you need.
No, but it's conversation though.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, you good?
Yeah,
there you go.
Let's do it.
Excellent. All right. Big win here at the end of the show. Excellent. So I'll see you again tomorrow, Khristina. Thank you everyone for watching. This is not financial advice. We're just having fun and sharing our passion for investing in the fastest racehorses on planet Earth, pretty much. All right.
Bye, everyone.